This is a window. It is located in the east wall of the sanctuary in the upper gallery at St. Andrew's Church and faces out onto Emily Street in downtown Toronto. This window has served as a portal for light to enter the church sanctuary each and every day since the construction of the present building in 1875. The windows in the nave, which is a name for the larger part of the church sanctuary, were originally filled with painted glass, likely similar to the painted glass in other parts of the church. But the glass that is in it now has been in this window since the late 1920s. But never has this window, in all that time, housed a scene or story set in stained glass, as are found in so many of the other church windows in this sanctuary. In fact, until the 1920s, none of the windows in the nave of the sanctuary contained any scenes or images set in stained glass. Until that point, the only stained glass windows in the sanctuary were the 5 windows in the gallery of the chancel area, including the central window portraying the story of the Good Samaritan. But things started to change in the 1920s. In 1925, a majority of the Presbyterian churches in Canada, along with Methodist and Congregationalist congregations, decided to come together to form the United Church of Canada, but not St. Andrew's. The members of the congregation decided to remain Presbyterian, as did about 1/3 of the Presbyterians in Canada, as it is to this day. As the dust settled from the disruptions and debates around church union, the members of St. Andrew's Church decided in 1926 that the church building at the corner of King and Simcoe, which at that point was about 50 years old, was in need of some repairs and renovations. As Presbyterians do, a committee called the Jubilee Committee was formed to raise funds and to oversee those renovations and those updates to the church building. In the Book of St. Andrews, which was published in 1930, the Reverend Stuart Parker described some of those renovations and wrote that the task of beautifying and renovating the church was begun in the summer months of 1926. The first undertakings were the reflooring of the chancel and aisles and the pointing and weatherproofing of the entire building on the outside. The wooden floor of the chancel was replaced by marble tiles in a chaste and interesting design, while the aisles also, formerly carpeted, were laid with tiles. The work continued thereafter each summer, being concluded in August 1929. A stone wall designed by Mr. S.G. Curry, the architect of the chancel and institute, was built around the church property, the church house and the vestry, and finally the church itself were redecorated, while the windows lighting the nave of the church and marred by the gallery intersecting them on the inside were divided by the ingenuity of Mr. Curry into separate series, one series above the gallery and one below on each side. The windows were entirely reglazed with semi-opaque glass, and by 1929 commissions had been given for several memorials in stained glass. The architectural changes to the windows that Reverend Parker wrote about, and specifically the division of each of the window wells into an upper and lower series, can be perceived better from the outside in a way, because we can then see how this dividing plate is inserted between the upper and lower sections, effectively dividing the windows on the inside so that stained glass could be more easily installed. In a monthly congregational newsletter written in November 1928, Reverend Parker articulated his hope that the now divided window wells would soon be filled with stained glass windows. He wrote, "The windows now installed are not intended to be permanent. We are full of hope that they will soon be replaced with real and beautiful stained glass, not the painted glass of former years. I am looking forward, and I hope not very far ahead, to a time when God's sunshine shall come to us filtered through the pictures which commemorate our well-beloved dead. After all, what symbol could be more appealing? They showed us in their lifetime something of the divinity that is in common man, and how can the thought of God come to us, and how can we rise to God better than by the contemplation of those beautiful lives which, in their own several ways, have been consecrated to his service?" Thus began a new chapter in the way that the sanctuary of St. Andrew's Church looked, with the result that now many of the windows in this sanctuary are filled with stories. Stories of people who lived and served in the congregation. Stories of loved ones lost in war, hallowed in the memories of their loved ones, and remembered with respect and with gratitude. Stories of long-standing servants of the church. Stories inspired by lives shaped by faith and hope and love, all interwoven with images and symbols drawn from the pages of Scripture and from the history of our city and of this congregation. As we will see in the short videos that will now be presented about each window that will follow, the scenes and the depictions sometimes actually lead to quite complex and intriguing interpretations of biblical passages. In others, the windows offer profound and transforming insights into those ancient narratives. In others, there are clever uses of symbols and images which, when noticed, reveal the intention of those who chose to use those images to honor their loved ones. And all of them are quite worth pondering. And why? Well, all too often, those of us who are regularly in this space become so familiar with these windows that we stop paying attention to the stories that they contain, and in so doing start to forget the lives of those who are commemorated in them. And over the years, the stories start to be forgotten, which is why it seemed like a good idea to look again at these beautiful windows and find out a little bit more about the stories and images and lives that are commemorated in them. Because there's inspiration to be found in these beautiful windows. They are indeed stories set in glass and light.